Welcome back, everybody. In this episode, we're going to start on our wonderful equipment series. So we're going to try to do an implementation similar to Lyra style, but I do things just a little bit differently because Lyra doesn't include anything that has to do with like stats rolls or anything like that. So I'd like to try to get through and also include stats rolls into the equipment. So the first thing is we're going to need some classes, right? So we're going to come to classes, we're going to come into public, make a new C++ class, and this is going to be, we'll just make it an actor component, and this will be called equipment manager component. Now we can put this inside equipment folder. Second class that we're going to need is just an object. And this is called an equipment definition. And we'll put this inside equipment as well. Third class that we're going to want is also an object. And this one's going to be called equipment instance. And this will go in equipment. Then the last class that I want to make is just a blank one. We'll just make this and we'll call this equipment types. Put this inside equipment. So now that we come back in here, let me open the manager component. I don't think the manager component is there. So holy cow, we got a bunch of classes. So let's do this. We're going to start in the manager component. We're going to get rid of tick, gameplay in the constructor. Actually, I think I can get rid of begin play possibly. Let's get rid of begin play until we need it. Well, this is going to be a FFastArraySerializer as well. So we need to let's set up the FFastArraySerializer at a minimum at least. So we'll make a ustruct and we will call this FRPG equipment entry. And this will inherit from a FFastArraySerializer item. And first thing we're going to make is an fGameplay tag, and this will be the entry tag. uProperty, the blueprint read only, which means I need to make this a blueprint type. Okay, now we can read it. And then we're going to want fGameplay tag. This will be called the slot tag. Put it here. We can put fGameplay tag. We can put rarity tag. And then we're going to want to track all of the gas effects and everything. We're going to want to track all that so we can apply it and remove it, apply it and remove it as we equip and unequip it. So back in my equipment types, I'm going to come clear this out. Clear this out, and then we're going to include equipment types.generated.h. So then I can say ustruct, and we're going to call this an fEquipment granted handles. And this one's going to be pretty straightforward. It's just going to have a T array of fGameplay abilities spec handles. This is granted abilities. Gameplay ability spec handle. Then this is going to have a T array of fActive gameplay effect handles. And this is going to be active effects. And then we are just going to write two little functions. They're going to be real easy functions. Void add ability handle, and this will take in an we'll just take an fGameplay ability spec handle called ability handle. And we could just define it right here. We could just say granted abilities dot add ability handle. We're gonna make void add effect handle, f active gameplay effect handle, effect handle. And now that we have that, I'm going to close equipment types for now because I think that's the only one I want to set up for now. But then we're going to make an F equipment granted handles. And we're going to say that's just a granted handles. Set that equal to that. But in the new property, what we're going to specify here is not replicated, because these are really only going to be handled on the server, so we don't really necessarily want to replicate those, right? And we're going to make a private section, and in the private section we're going to have, well, we're going to want to mark first the U equipment manager component. We're going to want to, we'll need to forward declare it, even though we're in here, we're above the class declaration. Then we're going to want a T subclass of U equipment definition. We'll add a forwarded declaration for it. And that's just going to be the equipment definition. And we'll set that equal to null pointer. And then we are going to want a T object pointer to a U equipment instance. We'll add a forward declaration to, we'll call instance. Set that equal to null pointer as well. And that should be good enough to start us with just a basic item. So then we're going to make our FFastArraySerializer, and we're going to make our FFastArraySerializer, which is the FRPG equipment list, and that's going to public FFastArraySerializer. We're going to start by making a private section, and in the private section we're going to have our array of the FRPG equipment entry that we'll call entries. We have a U property, and then we are going to make a T object pointer of a U actor component called owner component. Give this a U property, and then we're going to handle all the fast array stuff, right? So we need two constructors. We need an FRPG equipment list constructor. That's just nothing that we can say owner components and null pointer. And then I need an FRPG equipment list that takes in a U actor component pointer called in components. And we'll just set owner component to in component. Okay, now we need to set up the FFastArraySerializer contract, which are the three timings, right? That's the pre-replicated remove with a const t array view of int32 called removed indices and int32 final size, and the void post replicated add const t array view int32 added indices int32 final size, and then void post replicated change const t array view int32 changed indices int32 final size. That ends the contract, which means now we need to net serialize. So I need to do template struct t struct op type traits FRPG equipment list t struct op type trait space to FRPG equipment list, and enum with net delta serializer equals true. So then I can just come here and say bool net delta serialize fnet delta serializer non-const reference called delta parms. And we can just return fast array delta serialize, giving it the template. First parameter is the entry. Second parameter is the array serializer. First one is the entries, what we're modifying. Second one is the delta parms. And the third one is a reference to ourself. So we need to dereference this. All right, now it's timed. We're just going to start with two, add and remove entry. We're just going to start with those two. So the first thing we're going to do is a u equipment instance pointer return, and we'll call this add entry. And this is just going to take a const t subclass of u equipment definition by reference, and we'll call this equipment definition. And then we'll just say void remove entry, and we're going to remove it by u equipment instance pointer called equipment instance. And we can generate definitions for all of these. We'll leave this down here. And then we're going to come down to the actual equipment manager component itself, right? So the first thing we're going to need is a copy of an FRPG equipment list that we'll just call equipment list. This is u property replicated. And because that's replicated, we need the virtual void get lifetime replicated props. We're going to need that, and then we're going to write just two functions to start: equip item, and this will take a const t subclass of equipment definition reference called equipment definition, and then we'll write void unequip item, and this will take a u equipment instance pointer called equipment instance. Now we don't want clients to be able to equip and unequip items, right? So this is something we're going to want to make a private section for, and we're going to say void server equip item, which will just take a const t subclass of u equipment definition, and this will be equipment definition and u function server reliable, and then we'll have void server unequip item, and this is a u equipment instance pointer equipment instance u function server reliable. Then we can generate definitions for all of this. Now that we have the concept, this is the idea of where we're going to start. So now that we have that, we can fill some of this stuff in. Let's get do rep lifetime for the u equipment manager component, and we're going to do the equipment list is going to get replicated. And then similar to our inventory, we're just going to come here and we're going to say if not get owner as authority, then we're going to say server equip item passing through the equipment definition, and then we'll just, now that I'm on the server underneath, I'm just going to call equipment lists, and we're going to say dot add entry and passing through the equipment definition, right? We're just going to leave it like that for a moment. In the unequipped item, we're just going to do the same thing. If not get owner as authority, server unequipped item passing through the equipment instance, return, and then we can just take the equipment list and remove entry with the equipment instance. Leave it like that. And in the server equip item, there's not really any server verification we can really do to this. They're just sending through the item. We can do the verification to equip the item through the inventory, because I plan on making this an item, so we can handle that. So for these ones, we're literally just going to call equip item, passing through the equipment definition. This one we'll call unequip item, passing through the equipment instance. Now that our equipment manager can at least add an entry and remove an entry, we come up to these and we're going to add an entry, right? So we're going to have to make a new equipment entry that's got an entry tag and a slot tag and a rarity tag and these granted handles that's not replicated in this stuff here. So where are we going to get all of this data from? And we're going to get all of this from the equipment definition class. So we're going to come up here and mark this blueprint type, blueprintable, and we're going to make a public section, and in the public section we're going to make an FGameplay tag, and this is going to be the item tag. Property edit defaults only, categories, custom values, info. Next tag that we're going to want, FGameplay tag, is the slot tag, right? We want uProperty, edit defaults only, categories, custom values, info. And then the third tag we want is the rarity tag. uProperty, edit defaults only, categories, custom values, info. And the last thing we're going to want for now is just a T subclass of uEquipment instance. We'll add a forward declaration, and this is the instance type. I'll give this an edit defaults only and a category of custom values, info. We'll just leave it all in the info tab. But this is an object, so it'll be really easy to look through anyway. And we're going to leave this as this for now. And I think we can just close equipment definition for now. Inside the equipment instance, what we can do is make a public section, and we're just going to write two functions, which is, we'll do this virtual void on equipped, and then virtual void on unequipped. And we're just going to leave these blank for now, but we can generate definitions of things we're going to do on equip and unequip, and we'll mark them virtual. So for any children classes of equipment instances that we want to do, we could just still leave it on equipped and unequipped, and we can modify what we do on children instances. But for now, we're going to be done with those. Now that we're back in the equipment manager component, let's start with add entry. And the first thing we're going to do when we add entry is just make some assertions. We're going to do what Lyra does. We'll check the equipment definition. Got to include equipment definition. We'll check the owner component, and then we'll check that the owner component get owner as authority, because this should only be called on the server, so we'll just assert that they're on the server as well. So we have a T subclass up, but what you could do is you could say const uEquipment instant or uEquipment definition pointer. We can get the raw pointer of the equipment CDOs. It's called the class default sub object by calling get default, and then we can say get default of a uEquipment definition, and we can get that off this equipment definition, right? So now that we have this equipment instance CDO, I can have my T subclass of equipment instance, and we can call this the instance type and set that equal to, we keep all of this on that equipment CDO, right? The instance type that we just filled out. And then we're going to say if not is valid instance type, instance type, which means we're going to have to include that. Then we can just set the instance type equal to uEquipment instance static class. We'll just set it to the default if it's not set to any specific children classes. The next thing we're going to do is use the slot tags. We're gonna run through our entries. So we're going to do like the inventory component. We'll say for auto entry it equals entries dot create iterator entry it plus entry it. We could say FRPG equipment entry equals dereferenced entry it, and then we'll say if entry dot slot tag dot matches tag exact, and then we can get the equipment CDO, and that has the slot tag. If it matches the tag, we'll call remove entry. But remove entry requires the uEquipment instance, and I made a mistake. If we type entry, there is no instance, right? And that's because I marked the manager component as a friend class, but I forgot to mark the friend class as the FRPG equipment list. And we could just friend struct FRPG equipment list. And now I should have the instance available to me because now I have access to that. And then we can say break. So now if there's one in the slot, then it will remove the one that's in the slot before we add this one. And how do we make a new entry is we do the entry by reference, right? We call it new entry, and we set that equal to entries dot add defaulted get ref. And now we're going to be modifying directly this one that just got added into the entries. So let's fill out this data off this equipment CDO. So we can say new entry dot, we have the entry tag, and we'll get the equipment CDO. That's going to be the item tag. And then new entry dot rarity tag equals equipment CDO. Rarity tag, new entry dot equipment definition, and we can set that equal to equipment definition, and then we'll set the new entry dot instance. We have to set that equal to new object of a uEquipment instance, and the outer is going to be the owner component. We can just call get owner. And then the class is going to be the instance type. And then so now our new entry is going to have the pointer to the equipment instance that will be spawned. Now that we have that data fill out, we can just mark item dirty, the new entry, and then this does return the pointer, so we need to return the new entry dot instance. Now we're not using it yet, and I understand we're not using it yet, but we will here momentarily. We're doing this one thing at a time. Now remove entry, we're going to check owner components to start, and then we'll loop through them. Auto entry it equals entries dot create iterator entry it plus entry it FPG equipment dereference entry it, and we say if we have the equipment instance, right? So we can say if entry dot instance equals equipment instance, check if it equals the entry instance, and if that's the case, we can take the entry it and we can just call dot remove current. And then now that we're removing it from the array, what we have to do is instead of marking an item dirty, we have to mark the entire array dirty, and that'll tell it to replicate and say, hey, there's the whole the array itself needs to be modified, not just the item. And And then we come down to the replicated notifies, and we're going to set ourselves up by doing the exact same thing. So underneath the entry, but above the equipment list, we're going to declare multicast delegate 1 param, and this is F equipment entry signature, and it'll send a const F RPG equipment entry reference. I will call this equipment entry. And then we can come down here, and right here in the public section, we can say F equipment entry signature, equipment entry delegate. Now that we have that, we can actually come back, because the server is going to need to do this, right? We have authority. So after we mark the item dirty, then we can say equipment entry delegate broadcast new entry. We can say that, and then in here we're going to come for these pre-replicated remove. There's nothing we can really do here yet. We will use that in just a minute, but there's nothing we can really do here yet. So for the add and the change, however, we're going to say for const int32 index through the added indices, we can say f rpg entry equals entries at index, and then just for now we can call the equipment element and then broadcast the entry. And we can do the same thing for here on the post replicated change. It'll just be the changed indices that we're going to loop through. So let's take a look. What else didn't we fill out? Well, we have this here. Now what we're going to do is just mark this. We're going to say set is replicated by default, and we're going to set that equal to true. We'll just set it replicated by default, and then we don't have to worry about it and any of the children forgetting to mark it replicated. So let's see, you guys have been following along. I don't know if anyone got lost in any of this yet, but just to make sure everyone's got everything on the same, what we could do is we could be on the, we'll check the clients because we know it'll equip it on the server, but we'll check the clients. So after they broadcast, we're just going to print some debugs on the, we can do it on the pre-replicated remove and the post-replicated. We can say gengine add on-screen debug message. We'll do -1 for the key, 5 for the display time. We're going to do red for the equipped for the add, and the message is going to be f-string printf. Text macro is going to say equipped item, and we'll do %s for string, and we're going to need a string, so star. We have the entry dot entry tag, and we can call toString on it. And then what we could do, let's just copy this and put it in the removed, and we'll go to the removed indices, and this will say unequipped item and the entry to entry tag to string. So this will just print only on clients based off of if we equip or unequip items. So how do we get all of this into the items, however, right? So we're going to come to the inventory, and in the item types, we already have the consumable props. So we're going to make another use struct above it. And this one is going to be F equipment item props. And we'll make this blueprint type. The only thing we need in here so far is a T subclass of view equipment definition. For it, and we'll call this equipment class and set that equal to null pointer. It defaults only blueprint read only, and we can put this inside here, and then we can do the definition, and we'll say F equipment item props, and this is equipment item props. And I just realized I didn't initialize any of these master item definitions to defaults, which is very bad. So we're going to take a second and make this give default values for everything. Blueprint read only. We're going to give these defaults real quick. This is equal to f text. This is equal to null pointer. This is equal to f text. This is equal to 0. And this is equal to f gameplay tag. This is equal to 1.f, because the default we're going to want is at least item effect level 1, so we'll just put 1 there. And then I'll set this equal to null pointer. Let's try to be a little proper, right? So now that I have this item type where I have this equipment item props, we can come back, we have the equipment tag, and we have all that. So we're going to come to the inventory component now, okay? And we're going to come up to use item. Well, let's start with the fact of this. I was talking to someone, believe it or not, about this, and I realized in my server verification, we have in this use item, when I call server use item, I call this has enough, right? And then I call use item, but then I run has enough again here, which is already on the server. So this is kind of redundant to do that, and it's running a loop through our entire inventory twice to check. So if we just get rid of it there, the server's still going to do verification even if a client sends it. So our server verification has enough is just right here. But now we have this item, and it's got that subclass of the equipment definition, right? So what we could do is in the inventory component, we can come all the way up here, all the way up at the top, and we're going to declare a multicast delegate, one param, and this will be called f equipment item used. And it will have a const t subclass of u equipment definition, and this will be called equipment definition. And we'll make us an f equipment used item used. This is equipment item delegate. Oh, I don't need to give it to that. So now that we're back in use item and we check it there, we have if is valid consumable props, right? But let's say we're making equipment items now. So now we can just do the next check is if is valid item dot. Now we have the equipment item props, and we can check the equipment class. And this is an incomplete type, so I have to include the equipment definition. Now, if that is valid, then all we have to do is really take the equipment item delegate and broadcast the item dot equipment item props dot equipment class. And then we can say inventory list dot remove item tag, right? So we're going to add the equipment tag for the item for the equipment class first to the inventory, and then when we say use item, we can say or equip item on our button. Then it will just call use item in the inventory list, which will broadcast out the equipment class for us to use. Now the thing is where can we use this equipment delegate, however, right? Well, the inventory component is held on the player controller. So let's come back to the player controller. So now that we're in the player controller, we don't have anything really to handle delegates, do we? We have the inventory widget controller and this right here. So we're going to make a private function, and we're going to say void, and this is bind callbacks to dependencies. And I call bind callbacks to dependencies whenever I just make a function that is adding lambdas to delegates. So first off, actually, before we bind the callbacks to dependencies, we need an equipment component, don't we? So we're going to put a T object pointer to a U equipment manager component, and we'll call it equipment component. I'll give this a U property, visible anywhere, blueprint read only, meta equals allow private access equals true. And this is replicated by default, so I don't even have to mark it replicated. I could go back and do that on the inventory component as well if you want to go back and do that. But then all I have to do is say equipment component equals create default sub object of a U equipment manager component that we'll call equipment. And that's all I have to do. I don't have to set as replicated here or nothing. Now we've got our equipment manager component. What we can say is if is valid inventory component. We can take the inventory component and it has the newly minted equipment item delegate that we can add a lambda to, capturing this, and it'll give us a const t subclass of U equipment definition reference that will, equipment definition reference, equipment definition. And inside the lambda, what we can capture is if is valid equipment component, right? Then we can say equipment components equip item passing through the equipment definition. So now we can combine these two components, right? So if the inventory uses an item, if we call use item, now if we call use item from the inventory and it's got the equipment class filled in because it's an equipment item, then this delegate will broadcast that we're using this equipment class, which the player controller will pick up. It'll broadcast through here the equipment definition, and then it will call equip item. Now I don't have to do any real authority checks on this because this will realistically only happen on the server if you think about it. Because when we call use item, regardless of if it's a client or if it's the server, it ends up going through the server to use the item, which will broadcast only on the server and do that. So there's no real clients calling equip item in the first place. Now that we've had the first semblance of tying this together, that I can put all of this here together, we have this print string for equipped item on the clients ready to go. And actually, if we wanted to copy this, we could copy this and bring this up here and put it here on the server where we say new entry tag, because this will be done on the server. Is equipped item here. So on the clients it'll end up printing twice, but on the server itself, you want to see it, it'll just print one time. But now let's recompile, and I do get a build error. It looks like it says for here in my generated files, the big thing is it's saying in line 212 no operator found, which takes a left hand operand of const t subclass in this right here. And what this is because I put a const t subclass reference in the server equip item, we have to delete the const reference. We have to delete the const reference. And then now we should be able to compile. Okay, so now that we're back in editor, we're going to come into blueprints and we're going to come into data. I have inventory, which has data tables and inventory definitions. So we're going to come here and we're going to make a new miscellaneous, and we're going to make a data table that is based off of a master item definition, and we're going to call this DT equipment items. Now, if you're planning on having like tons and tons of equipment, this is totally scalable. You can categorize and make data tables for each individual, right? So I'll show, like, we can say DT equipment, and then we'll say right hand, and then we can duplicate it, and then we can say left hand, right? And then we're going to come into the equipment right hand, add a row, and we're going to need to make some tags. So we have item consumable. So we're going to come here, add subtag. Now, the further you get into subtags, the further you can specialize it, right? So we can say item dot equipment dot right hand dot sword dot bronze sword. And we can add that tag. And then we can make the right hand have a mace dot broken mace. And then the equipment can have a item dot left hand dot shield dot wooden shield. Or if you want to have underneath the left hand, you could say left hand dot weapon dot small knife. So now we have 2 things for our left hand and 2 things for our right hand. So this is the right hand table, and we'll open the left hand table. We have to match up the tag name, right? So item dot equipment dot right hand dot sword dot bronze sword. And the tag is going to be this here, sword, bronze sword. So the item name we'll call bronze sword. The item icon I don't have yet. And then the equipment item props, I need the equipment class. So we're going to come into blueprints, and I'm going to make a new folder, and we're going to call this equipment. Definitions. And I'm going to break this up. We can just make these here sword, mace, shield, and we call the secondary weapon. And we'll start with the bronze sword. So we'll come into the blueprint class, and we'll make an equipment definition, and I'll call this BP equipment bronze sword. I'll load this up and come into the class, and we've got the item tag, and we will equip that. The instance type, we're not worried about slot or rarity tags yet, that's coming up, but the instance type, you can literally leave it at none, because remember it'll default it if it's none to this, or you can just leave it at this for now. But this is just the default class object in C++, and you can do that and leave the C++ class as the instance type. So we'll leave that for bronze sword. Duplicate this, and we can rename it broken mace, and then duplicate this and name it wooden shield. Duplicate that and name it small knife. And then we can just come in here and say this is the wooden shield, this is the small knife, and this is the broken mace. And they all use the same equipment right there. So we can save all, and then we'll come in here. This is the broken mace, it'll go into mace, small knife and the secondary weapons, and the wooden shield into the shields. So now I have those. So now I'm in the right hand, and the bronze sword is now in the equipment definition, which will be there. So I can just duplicate this, and we'll call this the broken mace, which will be the broken mace, and then this will be broken mace. And then we can come into the left hand and do the wooden shield to start. So that's item dot equipment dot left hand dot shield dot wooden shield. And this item name is wooden shield. This is wooden shield. Duplicate. Oops. Weapon dot small knife. And now I need to check right here. I just thought by missing that, this says dot sword. This should be dot mace. Dot mace. So dot small left hand dot weapon dot small knife. And then this is the small knife. So the next thing we need to do is come back to the inventory, and in the inventory definitions, see what we can do is we have the consumables. So now we can say the item equipment left hand goes to the equipment left hand, and the item equipment right hand goes to the equipment right hand. And you could just keep doing that for all the different item or all the slots that you have, right? We're gonna call the slot the left hand slot, the right hand slot. So we're gonna try to keep this consistent a little bit, but we'll call it that. And now I should be able to come back to my player controller, and where we have add item and use item, get rid of that. I'm gonna make an array, and this will be called equipment items. And we're gonna make a gameplay tag, and this is gonna be an array that will compile, and we'll add all 4 items: wooden shield, small knife, broken mace, bronze sword. And actually, now that I'm doing this, we can actually test that it removes off the parent tag and everything. If we come back to our equipment definitions, broken mace, we have the slot tag, right? We could manage gameplay tags, and we could just make new gameplay tags, and we can call this equipment dot slot dot right hand. Add a new one and call it left hand. And then this is right hand, so the slot tag be right hand. This is left hand. Shield is left hand. And the sword is right hand. So now I should be able to just do that. And I'm going to take this, and we are just going to say random array item. And I'm going to hook this up to all. Oh, I don't even need to flip-flop. We can just add item here. Just use item. Now this will check a couple things for us, right? This will check if we can't use the item unless we have it at first, right? And then if we use it and the slot tag is the same, then it should call remove, which should print our string here that it's unequipping the item, right? Because if it matches, it'll call remove entry, remove it, mark the array dirty, and then the pre-replicated remove, I should see unequipped item. So theoretically, we've got that. It'll just be 1. But one last thing before we give it a test is back in our widgets, this is the overlay in the inventory. I have the item row. Now this text block, this text right here, action text, is we have set action text. We have filter category tag for just consumable, but here's how we just do the nice thing about the macros. We just add another output execution, and it's called equipment. And then we can just drag off the tag and say matches tag. And this will be item dot equipment, and duplicate this. Now we can say it's consumable or equipment, and then if it's equipment, what we could do is instead of putting use, we could say equip. Right? So if you really wanted to, you could put these items, the consumable items, back in there to see how it mixes together now, because this is all items, right? Everything's just run off tags. So now we're going to come in here. We'll grab a client and we'll press tab, and I have no inventory, and I'll just push 1 a bunch of times. And now I have all of these health potions, mana potions, broken mace, and everything. But you can see it says use and equip. So wooden shield, equip. I have no print string. So we should use items and have no print string. And the first issue that I can immediately think of is I completely forgot that we have this owner component, and we, and by we, I mean, of course, me, like the inventory list, we have to initialize that, right? So this is the equipment list that we're going to initialize with this. We need to start by doing that. The next issue I can think of is my personal #1 issue. And you'll have to excuse me because this is my #1 personal issue. And this might not be your personal issue. But this bind callbacks to dependencies, I have a nasty habit of binding delegates to binding lambdas to delegates and everything and writing the functions out for them, but then never actually calling the functions. But because I don't call these, we need a spot to call this, and we already got rid of begin play, so we're going to go back and add it now. We're going to say virtual, or if you already have it, you can just add it to begin play. Now that we're in begin play, we just call bind callbacks to dependencies. That's just a personal me issue, excuse me. Now that we're back in the editor, let's open this up and we'll give it another shot. And oh, look at this, I have wooden shields. I don't know why my wooden shields didn't stack. That's interesting. But left hand wooden shield. Oh, I left the small knife there, and it's still not doing it, and we need this wooden shield fixed and the small knife. So my biggest reason also for this one, look, when we're doing this, we got the item tag and the rarity tag, but we never put the slot tag. We never put the slot tag into the new entry. So I'm checking here for this slot tag to remove it, and we never actually even put it there. So we need to fix that, and then I need to come back to the excuse this ending. There's these few things are bothering me. We need to come back here, and in the data inventory data tables in the left hand, the small knife is called a small knife. We can leave it like that. Oh, and because we did the slot tag, we need to recompile again. Okay, now that we have the slot tag and we fixed the name, let's give this another shot. And his health bar didn't initialize, so small knife, equip, left hand, wooden shield. There we go. Unequipped, left hand, small knife, so I can equip the wooden shield. And then I can equip the broken mace, and then the bronze sword will call unequipped right hand mace so that I can equip the right hand sword. So with that, this is pretty lengthy just to get us set up to be able to add it as an item and use it as an equipment, and we can do that so far. So coming up later, we'll keep expanding on this.